Well, hello there. How's everybody?
Good.
I hope everybody's had just a good time. Uh, all right. Well, has everybody been on spring break yet, or are we still working? Still working. Uh, so I'm guessing that y'all are going to have your break closer to Easter. Okay. All right. Um, so while we're waiting for everybody to get in tonight, let me share my screen and let's look at our weekly schedule. Get back to our content here. There's Danielle. Let me let me download that. All right. So looking at our schedule, we are now at March 17th. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Tonight we have Camille and Jerron, I believe, if I read the schedule correctly. Yep. And so there comes Jerron right now. And then we will have class again in 2 weeks on the 31st, and then a week after that on the 7th. And then a week and a half after that, we'll be back in Charlotte for our last weekend, and we'll talk more about that as we get closer to that time. I'm guessing that's way too late for anybody to miss that weekend being on Easter break, so that shouldn't be a problem unless you've got something else planned. Um, we try to wait and have that light. I'd like to have it earlier, but we try to wait till because in the spring till after all the week off that everybody needs is gone before we start scheduling more classes. And so everybody should be done with Easter and spring break by then, so that should be good. If not, get in touch with me individually and we'll talk about what we'll need to do. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do an extra weekend or not, because they've sold the building, as you know. I don't know what the takeover time on that's going to be. They still don't have any idea. So they said that we could get through this semester, but that's as far as the promise goes. So I don't mind. We'll do something else if we can't get together and do a makeup. So if you owe me a makeup or if you think you're going to owe me a makeup, just get in touch with me individually and I'll figure something out. But I don't know that I can plan to be there that next week on the 23rd or whatever that is, 25th. I'm not sure how that's going to go.
I didn't know they sold the building. Do we know where classes will be held moving forward?
My suspicion is we will go 1.24 miles away to the community college campus is what they're trying to swing. So that's a good question. I hope that's what they're going to do in the short term. Now the bad part about going to community college is they put you in jail sooner for bringing a drink or a cup of coffee than a vape pen or a sack of dope. They do not want anybody bringing anything in their buildings that would make a mess because they never use them. I told you about the one in Goldsboro that I was doing a facilities class and I asked them how old the building was. Now, I guess less than 10 years. The building's 33 years old. Still had the same furniture from back in the 90s when I was high school principal. When we did an addition, I bought the same furniture off state contract. That old blue model carpet with that blue furniture. Y'all seen it all. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Those blue back chairs, still got the same ones. Look brand new. Still smell like they're new after 32 years. So they don't have any customers at those places, and they don't hire much staff or any of that security. They just have pretty much empty buildings. So they won't let you do anything in terms. You can't even bring a drink in. In Goldsboro, they'll stand at the door and make you throw your drink away like you're going into the Panthers game. Kind of aggravating. But let's look. Let me share my screen. Let's see. Uh, I think it's called the Harper campus, Central Piedmont. Let's see. Is this the right one? Yeah. All right. So right now, right here's Wendy's where we turn in and go down to our place right here. Um, where's the Gardner Webb building? It's got to be here somewhere. Closet Factory. Choice. Gardner Webb's right here. So if you got off on Arrowwood and didn't turn in, you go on out about 3/4 of a mile and turn right down Hebron right here, and it's just right down there. I mean, you could literally throw a rock on a windy day and hit it. So it's in the same community. We'll still have the same deal with the hotel. Everything will be the same, except we'll just move. You can literally see how far that is. I think it's 1.4 miles, something like that. It's not very far. Um, let's see. It's at 8030 8030 8030 Arrow Ridge. 1.3 miles. 4 minutes difference right there at the same place. So they're supposedly working on that. Now, we may not move for the summer. They just haven't announced yet, but I don't want to obligate beyond this semester and then get my feelings hurt when we don't have a place to meet. So if we have to, we'll just do it virtually if we have to. We'll do whatever we have to do because I can't, you know, they'll send out a notice and act like you should have known and it's the first time you heard of it. You know how that is. When you don't have a plan, you can tell when people don't have a plan. Um, they're kind of winging it. And so they're kind of winging it on the sale of this building. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Anybody have anything for the good of the group tonight? Um, I'll turn it over to our presenters tonight. Let me turn my video off. Again, thank you all for being here. I think everybody should be in now. Got one more. Okay, there's Mondale. All right. So again, looking at our schedule, tonight we have Jerron's got chapters 10 and 11, and Camille's got 12 and 13. So, Jerron, I will stop my video. I'll turn it over to you, and we'll get started.
All righty. Let me share. I haven't used Zoomed in a while. All right. Can you all see that?
No. Yeah.
Can you see it?
We're starting to. All right. You got it.
All right. So, again, my name is John Lindsay. I am talking about Chapter 10 in our Supervision and Instructional Leadership book. Chapter 10 is on non-directive behaviors. And I apologize, I have two screens, so I'm looking at my screen and looking at y'all too. So, okay. Non-directive supervision talks about the idea that a teacher knows best what instructional changes have to occur, and that teacher has the ability to think and act on their own. So in this type of supervision, the teacher is the decision maker. The teacher is the one who is going to come up with the plan and execute the plan for how they want to solve the problem. The supervisor is the thought partner. They are there just to allow that teacher to operate in the right mindset and to follow the right focus. So the supervisor is not influential. They're there for ideas. They're only there to provide feedback and give questions that further the teacher's thinking. So the supervisor keeps the teacher focused on the observation of the problem, their interpretation of the problem, identifying the problem, and solving the problem. So these are what the book called characteristics of teachers who would be a good match. So as they said, personality wise, it would be a teacher who's highly reflective. So someone who's resilient, they're very creative in their thinking, they can operate on their own. With students, they have that whole child approach. They want to look at the whole child and think about the child. That word culturally responsive. I know that's a taboo right now, but they're responsive to the cultures of their students. They focus on the individual needs of the students, and they value the students and who they are and what they bring to the table. How they act toward rules, they avoid coming off as an authority figure to their students. So these teachers are someone who that the students get along with, but they also respect, but they're not seen as like the man. They evaluate situations on a case by case basis. They know that students and the rules should be looked at it from various ways. Their teaching styles, they are student centered. They have a variety of teaching styles in their classroom. They reflect on their practice, and they also make sure that student voice is incorporated. And they extend the curriculum, whether that's through things that they do in the classroom, how they allow students to have higher level thinking. They just make it their own, but also make sure they're following the guidelines.
Can you
Inside
go
their
back?
class. Yes,
Excuse me.
sir.
Can you go back one slide? And I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. Is that the right slide?
That's the right slide. All right, you can go forward now. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I had read it correctly.
Gotcha. Inside of their classroom, it's a warm and loving environment. It's caring. There's cooperation happening. They're supportive, but they're also challenging students and allowing students to be reflective of what's happening inside of their classrooms. These teachers, when it comes to decision making, they look for a variety of information, a variety of sources in making decisions. They are open into hearing other people's suggestions, and they are overall supportive of the democratic process. They want to make sure that we're following the guidelines and the rules, and they'll help people in making those decisions. When it comes to problem solving, they consider all of the factors that happen or the mitigating factors, all the things that are underlying problems in a situation when they are trying to find the best um, way to solve a problem. They have personal values and they use those values to guide what they believe and how to solve the problem. But they also consider the point of view of others. So they want to compromise and they're willing to compromise as long as it does not stop them from their personal values and their morals and their ethics. How they handle change, they identify and they're the ones who vocalize the need for something to change. But then they also consider the impact to the students in their classrooms, to the people in the building, to the curriculum. They look at those from various different viewpoints. And then they help others with that change. So they're the people who are bringing others on board or on ship with what is happening or a change that's occurring. And with others, they're a leader. They're a leader in the school building. They're a leader in the community. They're a leader in the school. They are engaged, which means that they are actively engaged with other people. They have conversations with them. They talk with them. They show up to events. And then they're considerable of other people. So they know that something might hurt someone's feelings. So they don't say it in a specific way, but they are involved with other people and in community with other people. So again, you've probably seen this before. That's the supervisory behavior continuum. And that just walks us through how to supervise individuals. And this is also, again, which my next slide kind of directs you into the sequence, the non-directive sequence of behaviors. So that slide is there just for you to see. And it also in each one gives you a kind of viewpoint of what you should be doing. But the non-directive sequence of behaviors, it talks about those 10 behaviors. And what I broke it down into, which was best for us, is to say, as a principal, as a school administrator, as a supervisor, what should you be doing during that specific stage during the sequence of behavior? So while the listening stage, you want to understand what the teacher initially said. When the teacher came to you with a problem or with a complaint, so you want to make sure that you are hearing what that person said, listening to them when you have this conversation or when you have this coaching session. Then you give them a reflection. So you'll capture what the teacher is saying, making sure you repeat things back like, what I'm hearing you say is this, and then allowing that teacher to make sure that they are hearing what you're saying. So that goes into the clarifying stage. You help the teacher further identify the problem. So you aren't giving off any of your opinions. You aren't saying anything that you believe should happen. You aren't going into it with the idea of a of a solution, idea that this is what I want to happen. I don't have a predetermined outcome. Then you move into encouraging. So you keep the teacher thinking about the problem. You want to make sure that they have gotten out everything that they need to say, all of their problems, all of their grievances, anything. And then you move them into reflecting. You allow that teacher to affirm or reject your understanding. So you say, so this is the problem, this is what I hear. And you allow them to say, yes, that's right, no, that's wrong. You allow them to get everything out that they want to get out to be able to help them move into problem solving. So in that phase, you help them generate solutions, or you aren't giving solutions. They are just coming up with a list of ideas and things that they could do to solve their problem. You're helping them generate. Have you thought about this? Not saying anything specifically, or what is something that could help you solve that problem, or what is a program that you've used that will help you be able to help these students read. Whatever it is, you're guiding them, but you aren't providing any solutions yourself. Then you want to then move into problem solving again, but you're narrowing down, helping this teacher or helping the person that you're supervising narrow down their information. You're helping that teacher find the solutions that are possible. So you're going from probable to possible. So like, what is something they actually can do? What is something that I actually can accomplish in the amount of time that I want to accomplish it in my classroom, or with my grade level. And then they compare the outcomes of all of the possible solutions that they've come up with. Then you moving them into presenting. So you help that teacher establish what is doable, what is feasible, and what has accountable action. So what is something that they actually can do inside of their classroom, or that they have control over? They're feasible. That means that it is actionable. They can put action to it. It's something that can then be accomplished, so that they're accountable for the action that happens afterwards. Then you move them into standardizing, where they help the teacher determine what are they going to do, how are they going to do it, and when are they going to do it by. So you set up the plan. You help them create that plan. They're going to tell you, oh, these are the things I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it, and I want to get it done by the end of first semester, the end of the year, 2 weeks, whatever that is. Then you move into reflection. So you repeat and you just verify the plan. You are only repeating what that teacher says they're going to do, how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, what the problem was, and then you are over and you're done with being able to coach and guide that teacher into a problem solving, or to solve a problem. How do you initiate non-directive supervision? So teachers may be hesitant to participate because it is the least used style of supervision according to our text. Teachers must understand that I missed the word, that there is no preconceived solution to the problem. So you aren't going into it letting the teacher know, like, there's no outcome that I want out of this. I want you to be able to solve this problem, or you to be able to accomplish what you want to get out of it, so that they aren't standoffish, so that they aren't wanted just to give you an answer that they believe that you want to hear. Then the supervisor must not use that to manipulate decisions. So not going into it and saying, like, this is what I want this teacher to do, and I'm going to help her get to what I think she needs to do. I think we all know as administrators, sometimes, like, we're like, oh, this is all that person needs to do. Like, they need a little classroom management. They can get this little boy to sit down, or they can get this thing to stop. And we use our power to kind of manipulate them into something, or to kind of shove them or nudge them into a decision that we've made, or a decision that we think is best for them, rather than them making that decision themselves. It is best, again, to use non-directive supervision with a teacher who is capable. If a teacher has the expertise, if the teacher has the knowledge, if the teacher has the skill, then we want to use non-directive supervision so that they are solving their own problems and we're just facilitating the solving of the problems. But it can be used once trust and rapport are built. So if you have new teachers or you're new in a building and people don't know you or they don't trust you, it's going to be very difficult to use non-directive supervision because it will almost come off as like I got you, like you aren't giving them any direction, but you want them to do something different, but you aren't trying to provide them the support that they need. So they want to trust and know that you giving them direction or allowing them to make decisions is because you trust them and you know that they're capable of doing so. So in the book, it talked about non-directive versus laissez-faire. And so it said that non-directive supervision is the supervisor is actively involved in improvement. They're sitting down with those teachers, they're guiding them, they're walking them, they're facilitating the decision making. They're not just letting the decision be made alone. In laissez-faire supervision, the supervisor has minimal involvement in improvement. It's just like they remove responsibility from themselves for assisting a teacher with making decisions. So it's important to know that non-directive supervision is not laissez-faire supervision. Yes, hands off, and I'm not making the decision, but I'm going to help the teacher use her thinking or his thinking to determine the best outcome that they know possible. Some issues with non-directive supervision. The question is, can a supervisor really remain non-influential? And the book talks about human interaction is influential in itself. Anytime you interact with someone, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, there's going to be some influence. But as a supervisor, when you're going into a meeting or you're going into a session with a teacher or a person that you supervise, you have to actively continue through the process to make sure that you aren't trying to get your ideas or your opinions out or your decision out to a teacher. Then another issue, it says, what happens when input is desired? So when input is desired, the text really says that you really should not give any input, any ideas, even if the group of people or the person that you are coaching desires it. Because if you are in non-direct supervision, the person who that you're supervising should be capable of accomplishing or creating a goal for themselves or a plan for themselves. So the issue, it says, what do you do when a group is reluctant or not capable? So when a group is reluctant or not capable, then the book says don't use non-directive supervision. You want to try, you want to, provide a different type of supervision. If the group is reluctant because it's just something new, then you want to keep trying. But if they're reluctant and they look at you and you're sitting in a meeting for 20 minutes of people just shrugging and looking at each other and no decision is being made, then it's best to switch to a different type of supervision with them. Then it says the question is, what is the exact sequence of implementation? So with a non-direct supervision, it follows that continuum. And that continuum, what I thought was beautiful because I was a piano player. What the book said is it's like a piano play, like from my left hand, I'm going to start and I can play the keys with my left hand and I can play with my right hand. But I know with a song, it starts with a note and it's going to end with a note. But your hands and the things are going to move throughout it, up and down until it ends with where it's supposed to. When to use non-directive behaviors. So you want to use this when a teacher is at a high developmental level. So when they are capable and able to accomplish problem solving, they know their skills, they know their craft, they know their curriculum, this when you want to use it. When a teacher has the knowledge and expertise, but you don't. So if the teacher is an expert in the field of whatever it is and you aren't, then you want to use non-directive behaviors because you are not the expert. I've been a literacy facilitator 3 times in my career, and I do not like literacy. I love literacy, but that is not my field. I'm a math and science person. So every time I was a literacy facilitator, I would tell like the people in my PLC, my staff, my teachers, is that you are the expert. I know good teaching. So I'm going to talk about practices and processes and things while you tell me about the content knowledge. You're going to make a decision about how you teach this and what you teach it. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of expertise in good teaching, pedagogy, those kind of things. So when the teacher has the responsibility and you have little involvement. So when the teacher is going to be the person who is executing the plan, they're going to be in the classroom doing whatever, or they're going to be outside of the classroom doing something, and they're the person that's going to actually do it, and you are have hands off, then you want to use non-directive behaviors. So when a teacher is committed to solving the problem and you don't care, not necessarily in a you don't care in a bad way, but it's just like that teacher has more skin in the game for it, than you do. The outcome or the problem is something that you may not see as a problem, or you may not see that they need to be as worked up as they are. So you want to use non-directed behavior so that they can solve their own problem because they care about their problem more than you do. Then when a teacher or a group is overly emotional. So when we have a teacher or a group that is overly emotional about something, they spent 30, 45 minutes of their whole PLC griping about one issue or something like that. You want to use non behaviors so that you can follow that continuum and allow them to address their problems, to get all the information out, and to be able to share all of their concerns and come up collectively with a plan that works for all of them. But then they've also now build rapport with you as their supervisor because you've heard them and you've listened to them, and so that they're more able to now solve their problems together. And then to facilitate expert teacher collaboration. The book says this is the end all to be all. Like this is the where you want to be, the bee's knees, as you would say. Like if you are able, to use non-directive behaviors to allow facilitate an expert teachers, a group of teachers to collaborate together, while they're either, talking about school-wide improvement or grade level improvement or district level improvement or whatever it is, that's the best way to use non-directive behaviors because you have a capable group of individuals collectively now working with each other to solve problems. Right. That was chapter 10.
All right, let's stop your share and stop for a minute here.
Gotcha.
All right. Jerron ought to be in the internet media or newspaper business. He buried the lead on that one. What was it we call it now? Clickbait? Actress has revealing dress at Oscars, and then to get you to click on it, it don't tell you who it is. All right. So my analogy here is we got to start out with the lead in this one is they got to be capable. They've got to be a high developmental level. If they're not there, then don't, that's first decision you got to make in this. That's the first decision you got to make. Now, by show of hands, in the current building that you're in, raise your hand if more than half of your teachers are at that developmental level. More than half, by show of hands. All right, by show of hands, how many, half of your teachers are not at that level? Usually it's about 50-50. There was a time when everybody would have raised their hand, but not anymore because of residency, lateral entry, alternative pathways, uh, teachers who have come through traditional programs but couldn't pass the EdTPA, so they can't get licensed, TAs to teachers that can't pass the licensure exams. And I was thinking most specifically of the Howard ladies tonight, Sparkle and Danielle, in their districts. Um, you know, in places like that, maybe 1 out of 4 teachers you could use this with, maybe 1 out of 4 in Charlotte and Durham, maybe 1 out of 4. But that's the lead on this one. This works great with those quadrant 4 teachers. If we were talking about situational leadership, the ones that are, that you can do low task and low relationship with. You don't have to tell them what to do every day. We just don't have that many of them anymore, unfortunately. All right, and that term that Jerron used that's in the book, that's an old school term. That laissez-faire, that goes back to Kurt Lewin, the late 40s. when he talked about autocratic, democratic, and laissez-faire, that's not really a thing anymore. That kind of went out with situational leadership, which now has morphed into transformational, but it's still a form of situational that you apply the leadership that the follower is ready for, maturity, readiness. They got to be capable. They got to be highly developed. And that's the whole notion of this. This is an excellent strategy with your best teachers. It's suicide if it's your worst teachers. This won't work at all. Somebody literally is going to get hurt in their rooms if you try this with them. So that's the important thing to remember. This is an excellent strategy for excellent teachers. It allows collaboration. It allows teacher leadership, empowerment, but you only want good teachers to be empowered. You don't want to empower the bad ones because that gets out of control real quick. That's just grown people talk there. I know it's in the textbook, but this one you got to be really, really careful with. You did a great job on that one. All right, we're ready to move on to the next one.
All right, chapter 11. Chapter 11 was on developmental supervision. So this looks at developmental supervision as a model, an integrated model. All right. All right, so developmental supervision model has three phases. It talks about the phase one, where you choose the best approach to use, phase two, where you apply the chosen approach, and then phase three, where you foster teacher development and you increase responsibility in teacher choice and in decision making. So in thinking about phase one, choose the best approach. So you have to consider when thinking about developmental approaches for behavior and gosh, let me say that. I said that completely wrong. You have to consider that teacher's level of adult developmental expertise and commitment. Like, where does the teacher fall in their different levels before you choose the approach that you want to use for supervision? But then, what is the urgency of the problem that you have? Is this a problem that needs to be solved now? Does it have to be solved later? Do you have time? Do you have the ability to choose different approaches, or do you need to get it accomplished in a specific approach because of the urgency of the problem? And then can they define what the problem is? So when choosing the best approach, if you can't, if they can't, the person who you are coaching or mentoring or meeting with, if they can't define the problem, then you need to make sure that you choose the best approach that will allow you to identify the problem before you begin. And then do they have ways to respond to a problem? So does the person have the skills, the teacher have the skill set, the toolbox to respond to the problem that they have? So in choosing the best approach, you want to make sure that you don't use non-directive with a brand new teacher who doesn't have the skill set or the toolbox to use to solve a problem in the first month of school. They may develop that at the last month of school where you allow that type of approach to happen. But at the beginning of a school year, month one, you don't want to use directive with a teacher who's never taught before. Then do they accept the decision-making responsibility? So is the person who is going to make the decision going to be responsible for the outcome and be accountable for the decision that they make? If it is not, then you need to make sure you choose the best approach for that. Again, just because I talked about non-directive wouldn't be a great approach to use to someone who is not responsible for making decisions or who is incapable or does not have the ability to make those decisions. And then is it a group or an individual when thinking about the best approach? Everyone, again, as we know in a group, may not have the same characteristics. They may not be at the same levels. So you want to choose the best approach to work with a group versus working with the individual. And then if you are working with a group, what are the majority characteristics of that group? So you may want to use that specific approach based on the characteristics that that group mostly has. And then allow your one-on-one maybe to happen with an individual who may not need that type of approach in or coaching. And then you have to understand that you may need to change your planned approach. So you may have gone through all the different approaches and plan to use one specific type of approach, then you get into your meeting with that specific person and you say, hey, I don't need to do this because this person is knowledgeable or they have the skill set. So let me go to a different type of approach. And then you also want to make sure that you're using the approach that you use on a case by case basis and not saying just because it's this, I'm going to use this kind of approach or this is that person. And I know she always needs me to be directive, so I'm going to use that approach with her. But you have to look at the problem and look at the best approach based on the case or the problem that you have, even though if it's the same person or if it's a different person or a similar situation. And then one of the biggest things that the book talks about is you have to know the people that you supervise. So in trying to make the best approach to coaching and supervising, you have to know the people that you're supervising because you're going to use the best approach based on the times that you've been inside of their classrooms, based on their last observation, based on the meetings you've had with them, how they perform PLC, how they interact with their students. You have to know them to be able to choose the approach that's going to work best for them. Like you said, how can I know who my high level teachers are or my expert teachers are if I'm not in their classrooms? I've never done an observation for them. I haven't had conversations with them to understand what are the things that they value or the things that they, want to get accomplished. So in considering and choosing a supervisory approach, that is the model from the table from our book. I thought that was just a very good picture for you all to have in case you all needed it. So now in talking about phase two is applying the chosen approach. So you have to ensure that the fit and become comfortable with all approaches. So understanding that you may have to use a different approach to coach or mentor a teacher means that you have to be comfortable and have to apply and practice using all the approaches so that you can maneuver through them and ensure that you are using the correct one with the correct individuals. Then you have to be flexible. So you want to be prepared, but be ready to shift. So if you prepared to use a specific type of coaching approach or a specific type of approach to support a teacher or support a staff member, and then you get inside that meeting and you just realize it's not appropriate. You didn't have the information that you thought you had, or that person wasn't as capable as you thought they were. You have to shift into a different approach so that your meeting is meaningful and that you get something accomplished. And then the book talks about plan to implement different approaches. So even if you know this is the type of approach that you are going to use, what if it needs to change? And then I can plan appropriately so that I have different approaches to use if I do have to shift during a meeting or during a time where I am supporting a teacher or a staff member. And then you have to use new discovery to adjust. So if you learn out new information as you're meeting with a teacher or a staff member and you are coaching and working with them through something, or they are give you some information that you did not know before. If that information changes how you would approach it, then you need to change your coaching, changing your approach to better suit the new information that you have discovered. Then phase three talks about fostering development, increasing responsibility. So you have to remember that the long-term goal of teacher development is just that, development. The long-term goal is that we want all teachers and people to be capable of making decisions so that eventually as administrators, as supervisors, that, they have that responsibility and they're capable and we feel that they are and they take responsibility for that. So it says that teachers who function at higher levels use a variety of behaviors that are associated with successful teaching. So teachers who have these skills also display teaching skills that are proven to be successful in the classroom. Teachers can foster student growth in various areas. So teachers who may have a high self-esteem, teachers who have a very moral compass, they have a student-centered focus. They allow students who they teach and instruct to also build those skills and to foster those specific areas that they are also capable of. So teachers who function at higher levels also embrace a cause beyond oneself, which means that they want to get on board with school improvement. They want to make sure that the school is successful, not just them, not just their classroom. It becomes a culture, and they are more in depth to more likely to support you in the decision making as well because they are operating at that level and they see that you allow them to make decisions as well. So you want to make sure that you introduce teachers to new information about students and learning. What the book talks about is that a problem may not be a problem if a teacher has different understanding or the teacher has learned something new about a student or has learned a new strategy that they can implement. So if you as a school are given or and as a supervisor are given new information about those students or given new strategies or introducing your staff to new things, you are fostering their growth. And then you allow them to get to the point where they are making the decisions and they are responsible for those. And then you want to make sure that you're assigning teachers to groups intentionally. So if you are in a school and you guys have like, I was at a school and we had cadres. I don't even really know what that word means, but they were just like kind of PLCs, but not PLCs, and we all did different things. Make sure you are assigning those teachers intentionally so that they grow. So if you have a teacher who may, need more support with classroom management, how can you put that teacher in a group with someone else that has great classroom management skills where they can kind of pick up on each other informally or build connections based on that growth that that one specific teacher needs. And then it says develop professional learning structures. So the schools has structures like mentors. Who are you setting up as mentors? Are your mentors people who are positive, who are good role models in the school, and who are going to help their mentees be successful? Are you modeling? Are teachers in your building modeling? Do you have MCLs or all of these different positions who help support teachers inside of their classrooms? Are teachers allowed to see their colleagues teach? Are they allowed to pick up specific skills and things that they would not see if they were not in a classroom as that instruction was happening? Are EC and Gen Ed teachers co-planning together to support the students inside of their classrooms? And there informal peer coaching? Are teachers on grade levels doing learning walks and walking through each other's classrooms so that they can see the other things that are happening in the building or pick up things that they would never have seen if they were not inside of those specific classrooms. And so and then chapter 11 ended with case studies about different models.
Excellent. Excellent. Let me share my screen. All right. Okay, get out of that. Okay. All right. All right. One of the points that was just made by Jerron, who did a great job, introduce teachers to new information about students and learning. Do you see that here in this teacher observation that I did recently? All right. This is about learning. I'm trying to work him through Marzano. When we talk about skill, when we talk about ability, when we talk about high developmental levels, we're talking about their ability to employ the 9 high yield teaching strategies. And so, what did I reference him? These strategies, I saw three of these, and I thought he could focus on doing more of the similarities and differences. So I'm trying to increase his learning about teaching, but I also made a reference in here somewhere that he needs to know more about his students as well, about adult learning theory. Is that not what we were just talking about? Those are the two things that you should be able to do with a teacher that you're working with. Again, you can't sit there every day of the week with them. You're not the instructional coach. You've got to be able to give them, though, it's twofold. Jerron's exactly right. This book is exactly right. You need to be able to provide them more information about the act of teaching and learning, which is manipulating the high yield strategies, but they also have to increase their knowledge about their students. What are their characteristics? That's what I did in this one. What level would you say this person is in terms of their teaching? High or low, or somewhere in the middle? Somebody, anybody?
When I was reading it, I saw a lot of yeses to what they did. Did they do this? Did they do that? So it seemed like they might be high level. They provided some strategies to use. They provided examples, but I didn't get to read all of what you wrote. So
All right. So the idea here with that one was um that was probably mid low, probably mid low, but good enough that developmentally that you could do some non-direct behaviors with. But even if they're mid, you still do that. Now this is one you don't see any well, you see some references in this one as well. But this one is an example of a master teacher. This is an example of a master teacher. Do you see any? Well, I'll just tell you now, you won't see any of those references in it. Why not? She's a master teacher. She's very good at what she does. Um, and so my recommendations, you don't just throw out recommendations because you feel like because I did an observation, I've got to do that. That you lose your credibility. Um, when you're working with the lower level ones, that's when I saw these good things, need to focus on more that you got to teach them what teaching is, the high yield strategies and the characteristics of their learners. You didn't see any of that. You saw several references in the but you didn't see anything. You need to extend your learning. It was, you did a great job. You did these things. I would suggest this or suggest that. When you're doing this, I really like this or that. It's more of a reinforcement. Of those two, the second one was definitely non-directed. She's an expert. The first one was more directed. And it had the two things that you got to have. You got to lead them to become better practitioner of the nine instructional strategies, but they've also got to become better acquainted with what are the characteristics of the learners in my room. Those are the two things you got to focus on. And so you saw one was completely non-directed, and one was pretty good, pretty good direction on one. That's what we're talking about, the difference. Now, here's the catch. If we put those two people in the room and you looked at them, you would automatically assume wrongly that the young one needed the directed behaviors and the older one needed the indirect behaviors. And it's exactly the opposite. She's the youngest faculty member we got. She's the best teacher we got, though. He's in my age range, and he's but he wants to improve, but he's never had any true instruction in how to teach school. Um, and so you can't just say, well, that's a young person. They're going to need more help than that old person. Especially again, we're back to that same old song and dance. You got all these alternative licensure, lateral entry, residency. And if you look at them, some of them are middle-aged people, but that does not mean because they're middle-aged that you can do non-directive with them. It does not. Again, it goes back to where Jerron buried the lead. It's about their skill and ability. That's the first decision you have to make is you have to assess their skill level, their readiness, their maturity. I think how capable they are. And then you decide whether you're going to do directive or non-directive behaviors with them. You can't just say, old person, they got it. Young person, need help. Doesn't work that way anymore. I see way too many principals making that decision incorrectly. The good thing, now, what's the good thing about EVOS or in South Carolina student learning outcomes? What does it tell us? It tells us who can and who can't, doesn't it? We'd be crazy to ignore that. Why is that? We not only do we build that into the master schedule, we should also be building it into the classroom observations and the recommendations and the amount of direction that we're giving these people. Well, I've been doing this 20 years. Yeah, but you've got 1 year of experience 20 times instead of 20 years of experience according to your scores. So you have more than just your opinion is what you need to have some authority, some authenticity to your voice and to what you're telling these people. If they're not getting good growth scores, then that lends credibility to you got to work on this. And here's some things that you can do. Remember, your job is to offer suggestions for improvement of instruction. I believe that's what the law says in North Carolina. To offer teachers suggestions for improvement of instruction. Doesn't say that you're supposed to stay in the room with them all day and night. Offer for suggestion for improvement of instruction. That's what we're talking about. That's the definition of the school leadership role in instruction, not to be a coach in there in the room with them all day. That's not your role. And this falls in line with what the expectation is of instructional leadership for a school leader, not a curriculum and instruction person, a coach. That it's a completely different role. I beat that drum every time I'm with you because at some point, if I say it enough, maybe you'll believe it. You'll catch on. All right. Very good. I really enjoyed that. Camille, I'm looking forward to yours. I'll stop my video so you can share.
All right, can you all see that?
Not yet, but it's there we go.
Okay. All right. I can't see up there at the top.
All right, you're on the second slide now.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to do where,
Presentation mode. It
yes, sir.
sometimes it won't do that. Um,
Okay.
sometimes when you're not the host, sometimes it won't let you do it. But I can read that if everybody else can, so I'm fine.
Is it in presentation mode now?
No,
Because
no.
it's not. Oh, it's on my screen. It
Yeah,
is.
that's what I mean. But you're not the host,
Oh.
so it won't share yours.
Oh. Well. Okay.
It'll stay in that mode
Is
right there,
everybody
and that's
okay with?
fine.
Is everybody okay with that?
We're good.
Yeah, you
Uh,
good. You can go.
all right. Okay. So I did chapters 12 and 13 of supervision and instructional leadership. And chapter 12 was entitled Observing Skills. Observation is a two-part process. First, you have to describe what has been seen, and then you need to interpret what that means. So, the purpose of chapter 12 was to let you know that classroom observation helps instructional leaders understand teaching practices. And it also provides data about instruction and student engagement.
All
In
right.
fact,
We may be off here. Um,
okay, let
go
me
back
stop.
and click on slide 2.
Hold on. I'm getting ready to stop share
All right.
and I'm
We
pressing
were a little
share.
further over in.
PowerPoint slideshow.
Let me-
Let me try this one. What do you all see?
Now we see the purpose. And it's in
Is that all you see?
presentation.
Is that in presentation?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
in presentation mode purpose.
Okay. All right. And I was saying, after saying the second bullet where it says that it gives data about instruction and student engagement, um, after we had district personnel to come in today at my school, I know that I've already sent out an email to meet with my ELA teachers tomorrow because there's a misunderstanding of engagement. Some teachers feel as if that as long as the students are quiet and doing the worksheet, oh, my students are engaged.
Oh,
And
well.
that is not completely correct. It also gathers, the data gathered supports professional growth and instructional improvement. And also, observations guide the coaching and your feedback. Let's see. Now I'm trying to advance.
Not yet.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I do not see where I can advance. I can go. I'm pressing arrows and oh,
There it went.
okay. All
All
right.
right.
There we go.
Now
We'll
we're
do it
back.
that way. All right. So now examples of quantitative and qualitative systems. So right here, observation systems. Time sampling. This is tracking how time is used in the classroom. Event sampling, recording the number of times a behavior occurs. This one is one that I have used before. Teacher movement mapping, documenting the locations that the teachers frequent the room. And student participation tallies to see exactly who do you call on the most and who are the students that do give responses. And the interaction analysis, which you're going to see this next, where there is a tracking student and teacher interactions. Now, qualitative observations, you have qualitative or description forms of observations or alternative methods. The observer goes into the classroom with a general focus, and then the observer rearranges their observations into themes only after recording those events. Now, here are some examples of qualitative observation types. You can actually do verbatim or selected verbatim, where you can actually write down exactly what the teacher is saying and do verbatim notes. There's also detached open-ended narrative. You have participant open-ended observation and a focused questionnaire observation. After reading this, I noticed that I actually use the participant open-ended observation. A lot of times when I go into the classroom, I actually start and I become a functioning part of the classroom. I might assist in the instruction or I will become a student. And both the teachers and the students like that as well. Tailored observation systems. Now, these are observation tools designed for a specific purpose, or if there's some type of concern, and you focus on a particular instructional practice or strategy, and this allows supervisors to collect this information, and then is often developed collaboratively with the teachers. So if we look at some examples right here, in chapter 12, there's figure 1211. And right here, if you will look down at the bottom and you'll see the key. Now, with this tailored response right here, it collects 4 data points. How often the teacher calls on certain students, whether each student's response was correct or incorrect, and whether the teacher had to draw out those corrective responses. Let's look at Roberta up there at the top left. Now, Roberta first answered the question incorrect, but then she answered it correctly after prompting from the teacher. And with the circle around that plus sign, it tells you that the teacher gave positive feedback. And then the next question that she answered, it was correct along with the positive teacher feedback. So if you look at this graph right here, you will also see students that did not answer any responses at all. That is something that you need to know as the teacher. But then you do see some students that did answer several times and they answered negatively, but then they eventually got it correct with teacher prompting. School-wide classroom observations. Now, this identifies patterns across all classrooms in your school. It provides insight into instructional strengths and what are some gaps. This is also a needs assessment as well. You inform professional development and school improvement planning, and also this supports the data-driven instructional leadership. Now, this is figure 12, 13, and 12. I think that's 12, 14. I can't see up there. But this is an example of school-wide classroom observations. The one on the left is the key. And then the one on the right is the actual instrument that you use. And you can do this by doing 3 scans in the room using that. Using video recording in observations. When I was an instructional coach, I used this, and this was very, very useful. I used it within the school. I also used it without the school. I also filed all of these videos to where the other teachers had access to them. Being an ELA teacher, and you plan in PLCs with your peers. However, you hardly ever see them actually delivering the same lesson that you all planned together. So when I started doing this was very strategic when I did it, but it was beneficial for the teachers. And I saw definite growth when I did this for 2 or 3 years. And I did this also along with the BT coordinator for the county. Also, these are my personal reflections for chapter 12. Observation skills, when they are developed and that they are strong, this collects meaningful classroom data. And there is a distinction between qualitative and quantitative observation methods. Would you like for me to go on to chapter 13, sir?
I would.
Assessment and planning skills. The purpose: instructional leaders must assess instructional needs. And look at the words that I actually put in different colors. Assess. Then planning helps improve teaching practices across the school. And then once you plan, that planning aligns improvement efforts with data and goals. So now let's look at personal improvement within ourselves as the instructional leader, for ourselves and then for our schools. So let's look at assessment and planning. Let's start with assessing. Assessing time. There is an example. There's a figure in chapter 13 which shows a chart, and it shows where a supervisor is looking at their time consumption. Where do they mainly put the majority of their time? Okay. But then once you look at that, you might need to change some of your time allocations. For instance, we deal with a lot of email and mail. So a lot of times you can allocate that by maybe categorizing your email, and then the email that you might can trash and delete. Then there's other email that you might can delegate to other staff members for them to go ahead and spearhead. Also, let's say that you look at your time consumption chart and you notice you hardly ever go into the classroom, and you need to increase those classroom visits. Well, there's a flow chart for increasing your classroom visits. Now, ways of assessing needs, that's the needs assessment. There's 10 of them right here, but here are some of the simplest ones. Eyes and ears. You can, once you go into your school and go to the actual teachers and go to your staff members and listen, ask questions, interview. That's a great way of getting your needs assessment. Also, those school-wide observations that I mentioned earlier, a few slides before this one, that is also a needs assessment. I'm gonna go to number 4, review teacher and student work products. In many PLCs, you already do this, where you ask your teachers to bring student work samples, and you categorize them. And that way, your future lesson plan that you get ready to plan is data driven, because you've actually looked at student work samples. When I was an instructional coach, my teachers knew that they came in, they put their work in 3 piles. I called the piles the all that and a bag of chips pile. The middle pile was hit and miss, and the third pile was hot mess. So let's say that after you looked at your piles and you see that your hot mess pile is very thick, you need to look through that pile and see, hey, is it really a hot mess? Do these students not really master what I taught them? Or was it my delivery in that lesson? Did I miss something in explaining something to them? And then you might need to spiral back. Now we went into assessment. Now let's look at analyzing and then planning. So if you look at this chart up on the screen, when you want to analyze it, now let's do a cause and effect diagram. Oh, let's do a flow chart and see how we can analyze this. Now let's plan it. How can we incorporate this? And you can use infinity diagrams or process decision program charts, which I love. Let's look at one. This is from the book, okay? And this is on page 243. And you start off with the goal. And you see right here, you implement problem-based learning, which is the PBL. And then after you decide on the goal, then you look at 2 tasks that you want to work on that is going to help meet that goal. But you need to look at some potential problems. What would be some hurdles that we might have to overcome in order to complete those tasks? But while we know what the problem might be, let's go ahead and think of some possible solutions. So right here in this one diagram, you have been very strategic in how to reach your goal. My personal reflections for chapter 13. As an instructional leader, I see these concepts connect to the work that we do through data meetings, PLCs, discussions, and instructional coaching. Going through chapters 12 and 13, I was really pleased that a lot of things that I have done did not know that they had the names to them, but also learned these throughout in my county. Also, strategies outlined in this chapter, and you see them right there on the screen. But overall, both of these chapters strengthen my understanding in my instructional leadership and knowing that it needs to be deliberate and a reflective process all the time. You don't just go in and do an observation and just watch. It must be strategic and it must be deliberate what you are going in to look for. And this is my reference. Thank you so much.
All right. If you'll go back before you stop. Oh, she's already stopped. If you'll go back to one of your earlier slides.
Yes, sir.
All
Which
right.
slide?
If you'll go back and I'll stop you when you get there. I got 2 that I want to point out.
Yes, sir.
All right, stop. No, keep going back. Whoa, right there. All right. Oh, you went too far. All right. Look at that figure 1211. All right. My question is this. What's wrong with using that method exclusively? Somebody, anybody? What's wrong with using that method exclusively? There was a time in our history in North Carolina when we did that almost exclusively. What's the problem with that? How many of the 9 instructional strategies is that? That's only one of them. Questioning and cluing.
Right.
Is that the only tool in your bag? Is that the only trick you've got?
No, it's not.
It shouldn't be, should it?
Nope.
This is one thing, but this only measures a teacher's ability to question and clue. That's only one of the 9 high yield strategies. But when we went to something like this, what did teachers think? That's all they were supposed to do all day. Ouch. And there's not a lot of direct instruction going on in that, is there?
No, you're just looking
None.
for responses. Yeah,
That's
just looking
exactly
for
right.
responses.
They weren't doing the teacher input part. This is more of the guided practice part. They were skipping the teacher input part. You got to have one before you can have two. You got to have the teacher input before you get the guided practice, folks. That's just common sense.
You
So
doing the 6 point, you doing the 6 point lesson plan, Dr. Lamb.
that's exactly right.
Sure are.
That's exactly right. I mean, some things just don't change.
Nope.
I mean, you got to do the direct teaching before you can start the questioning and cluing. And teachers got where all they were doing was questioning and cluing. And they would pass out worksheet or read this, and then they would just question it. They didn't do what I call instruction. All right, so that's the first issue. Make sure that this is if every time you go to their room, if this is all they're doing, my question is when are you teaching them anything to question them about? That's my issue with that. All right, back on up. I got one more thing. Again, it's the only good thing I know about being old is I've seen about everything. Go on back. Time sampling. That originally was known as time on task. We started that in the 80s when when we were getting ready for accountability. We started monitoring teachers about how much time they had on task. What's the problem with that?
You asking me or anybody in the class?
Anybody, but you're the expert on this chapter. You tell me, what's the problem with just monitoring time on task?
Well, it's not really it's not
Not
showing that the
engagement,
kids are
is it?
engaged. No, it's not.
There you go. I love working with smart people. Worksheets are not engagement.
It's not.
So, what did teachers make sure that they did so that they could say that their students were on task for the whole period? Gave them worksheets. 100% time on task. No student engagement, though.
No student engagement.
So, these are all good techniques. They're all good things to have. But you have to understand what their place is in a total instructional program. Big picture. You're the big picture person as the school leader. You're not down in the weeds as the curriculum person. Big picture. If you see kids doing worksheets all the time, yeah, they're on their time on task, but they're not learning anything. You're not. There's no engagement. If all you see is questioning and cluing, you gotta ask yourself, when's the direct instruction happening? These are big ticket things that you got to see when you go in the room as the school leadership instructional leader. You got to be looking at the big picture. And then the last thing that Camille, you can stop your share now. That Camille said tonight that I loved, that I'm a big proponent of, is ethnography. When you're doing qualitative work, that you embed yourself in there and you're a part of that classroom for the time that you're there. That's what ethnography is, by the way. You should learn that in
Mhm.
your qualitative research semester. Um, if you're the school leader, you need to be engaged in that classroom when you're in there doing that observation or you're doing that support. You need to be engaged as well. You need to be a member of the group. You need to embed yourself, not just hide in the corner, and act like nobody can see you. You need to make sure that you are exhibiting membership in that group when you go in there. It makes your voice much more authentic um, if you are a part of the group. I think that's excellent, Camille. You may be teaching, you may be helping, you may be up and around, but you need to be a part of that. You need to show that we're in this together. I'm not just here to evaluate you, that I'm up here and you're down here. That this is a collaborative effort. When I'm in your room, I'm part of the group just like everybody else. I think that's kind of the key for me when you're doing that qualitative work. I think that's it. I think people will appreciate that, or I think they do. All right. Anybody else have anything on Camille's presentation tonight? We had two excellent presentations tonight. But again, maintain your focus on the difference in being a curriculum instructional leader and being a school leader. That's leading instruction. It's a big difference. Big picture, big ticket, big ideas. Make sure that you understand your role in curriculum as a school leader. All right. Anybody have anything for the good of the group that I've missed in terms of housekeeping tonight? Keep up with your evidences. You're doing fine. Keep up with all of your other turn-ins. Um, we're running a little long tonight, so I won't go through that, but I'll catch us up next time on the things that I've seen in your presentations. I've got a list, but we're already at 8:15. I've talked too much tonight. I've talked enough. All right. I'll see you in 2 weeks, back here, same time, same station. All right. It's good to see everybody tonight. Thank you. Everybody have a good week and
You
happy St.
too.
Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.